Let's dive in today. It's going to be a hot one. Joining me today is going to be Zach Rector. You guys do not want to miss it. We are going to cover a ton within the XRP ecosystem. This is the show to watch. Let's just jump right in. I want to bring in Zach Rector. As you guys know, Zach is one of the OGs of content creation, especially around XRP. So, of course, having him on the show is a great thing. Zach, how are you, my man?
Doing fantastic, Paul. It's a pleasure to be back on the show.
Yeah, man. Good to see you. We are nearing the year end and things are starting to cruise a little bit here in the market. When I say cruise, I mean, you get the sideways chop. We'll talk about that, why it's happening, because everybody's going, wait a minute, we got these XRP ETFs blowing up, but we don't see price action. What's going on? So we'll break that down for everybody. If you have not jumped over to Zach's YouTube channel, well, here it is, right here, Zach Rector over on YouTube. You guys can, of course, follow him right there. I'm going to hit subscribe off of this channel that I'm logged into right now. So that gives you one more subscriber. And of course, the cool thing that Zach does is he breaks down a lot of different angles. It's not just necessarily trading. He goes into depth around the research layers that fall into what XRP is doing. So, and Ripple, of course. So make sure and grab it over there on Zach Rector, Rector 94 on YouTube. All right, Zach, let's get into it. A couple of points I wanted to hit on. First was, did you hear the news? We'll hit on Coinbase just in the sense that Coinbase seems to be very edgy these days, as they now are going to be launching a prediction market. So on the 17th, we're going to have a prediction market and we're going to get tokenized stocks. Tell me, is this a top thing?
This is nearing the bottom of where we're at. And with all of these new markets that are going to be tokenized on chain, it's going to bring more access. And of course, you know, it leads with the silly stuff, betting on whether or not Jerome Powell is going to say good afternoon. And it leads to, you know, a lot more serious tokenization efforts that are underway, as we just got the news of the DTCC that's going to be bringing it on chain too. Huge. So yeah, step in the right direction.
When you look at what's going on with the DTCC and the potential for this, because this is an unbelievable amount of liquidity that comes in. This is kind of the scenario that we talked about with Sandy Call from the team over at Franklin Templeton. And she mentioned something that really kind of stuck with me, and that was this locked in liquidity around the world that tokenized assets are essentially going to open up for all of these Wall Streeters. Why will the DTCC become such a pivotal component for what we'll see in terms of liquidity?
Well, just simply based off the fact it's one of the largest securities clearinghouse, if not the largest. I think the tally's up at 3 to 4 quadrillion, and that's quadrillion with a Q, Paul. And I think that it's just funny to see, because we were called crazy for talking about tokenizing even tens of trillions and hundreds of trillions worth of securities and real estate, bond markets, etc. And to hear them talking about hundreds of trillions, and even I heard him mention quadrillions on stage at the Ripple Swell conference. And you bring up Sandy Cole from Franklin Templeton. I was so impressed, because it wasn't just, oh yeah, we're going to tokenize these traditional securities markets. Like you said, she was talking about tokenizing IP rights, sports ownership, creating new markets and democratizing them through tokenization. Now, they don't just have their eyes set on the addressable market that we have today. They're looking to expand it. So this is absolutely a massive development.
Well, and it gets back to the point of trapped capital that people don't even realize that's out there in the market. And I'm not talking about capital that's sitting in money market funds and, you know, interest-bearing accounts for private equity or even, you know, family office. I'm talking about trapped capital that is either in nation states, international banks, which a lot of high net worth individuals utilize. And then you go into the IP side of this, and then you get into RWAs that start to layer into this. And Ripple is at the dead center of a lot of this stuff in terms of advancements within the XRP ledger. First of all, did you see the news on XRP ledger 3.0?
Yes.
So big unlocks there in terms of development. Do you think that's going to hit hard in the development community and start to see some more acceleration there?
Yeah, I mean, if you look, the amendments that we have lined up for 2026 are absolutely massive for XRP DeFi. We've been late on DeFi programmability, but the beauty of the XRP ledger is that we have liquidity down. So this ledger is ready to scale. So when our DeFi does arrive, it's going to be secure and it's going to be able to scale with the
Huge.
ability to onboard a lot of liquidity. One of the amendments that I have my eyes on is the lending and borrowing amendment.
Yes.
Right? This is just going to unlock, and this is the whole market right now. You're seeing Charles Hoskinson yesterday tweeting out about wanting to connect with the XRP Ledger community and what are the top 10 XRP projects that I can bring to their conference. We're going to talk about the Solana integration. Everybody's coming to service the XRP community because we all
Isn't
have
that
a bunch of
interesting?
XRP that's just sitting idle waiting to work. And so you're going to see it happen within the XRP ecosystem. But then I've always talked about this hub and spoke model that we have, where at the center is the hub, which is the XRP ledger being a great source of liquidity. And then we're connected to all these other smart contract platforms, all these other DeFi platforms. And this is going to accelerate massively in 2026.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and we'll break it down. Just to, you mentioned the story there on Solana breaking this news, of course, at breakpoint. What surprises me, and you kind of hit on it a little bit, is people don't realize just how much of a dam that's out there in terms of XRP, being able to go into DeFi. Obviously, what they've got here is a whole slew, and we'll break down kind of the comparison, because I think a lot of people would say, well, doesn't Flare Networks do this? This one's a little bit different, but the announcement happened. It is going to go, the program launch with more than 100 million ready for deployment, offering pretty much liquidity across multiple chains. This puts XRP in play for lending markets, automated market makers, cross-chain settlement, liquidity mining, the whole thing. So it's a full-blown stack on what this might look like. And if you compare this, because now the change is that you'll have basically wrapped XRP, which means you can travel out to Solana, Ethereum, Optimism, all these different places, utilize it. The benefit is that XRP as a collateral on lending platforms, kind of like Aave and Camino, would be a whole new liquidity pool. Is that a good thing for, first of all, for XRP, or do you think OGs will even mess with this? Or is it going to be a lot of new people coming in and buying XRP so they can do this?
Well, I think that there are some OGs in our community that will deploy into these other chains. I mean, I've already started playing around with Flare and deploying some Flare and FXRP over there. This process is early. I think the big hurdle for the XRP community is we need the process simplified, right? We have a community that skews much older, moves more slow, and is not as trustworthy of bridging in some of these DeFi protocols. The beauty of this setup, though, Paul, is it's not just the DeFi providers and the builders that are going to be within our ecosystem that are competing for our business. Now it's all of these chains and the builders over there sitting in front of us. So we can decide, do we want to take and deploy into Flare, into Ethereum, into Solana, and basically the world is ours. Everybody's coming to service the XRP family. So it's great for XRP. It's great for XRP holders, and it's going to onboard a lot of people are finally going to come into XRP because they're going to say, okay, this is not just a speculative play for me anymore. This is something that I can hold as a great asset to speculate on, but I also can put it to work in the meantime. And we saw this, and it sounds so silly when our meme coin launchpad was created with First Ledger. We saw a whole wave of Solana degens came over to the XRP ledger. You get some good, you get some bad, and you get some ugly that takes place with that.
All the time.
But it's activity. And we want the more activity that we get with our XRP on the XRP ledger or XRP that's being locked up and deployed somewhere else, that's going to just drive more demand for XRP and leads to that supply shock that so many of us have been talking about.
Well, I think, okay, so one thing, just so we do our PSA here, is that the big fear right now is moving assets on these bridges, because you look around the history, it's been littered with wrapped hacks. We've seen everything from Wormhole, Nomad, Ronin, all those guys had problems out there. So I think the model of the old way, where you send tokens to a smart contract, this is basically controlled by anonymous developers or a multi-sig wallet. That's a little bit different. This new Hex Trust way is kind of interesting because this is a custodial model. So it's a little bit different. The XRP, I think from what I understand, it is not held by a smart contract. It's held by a Hex Trust. So it's a little bit unique in how they're going to go about this. But the fact that we've got this 100 million in liquidity coming in pretty quickly, that should seed the market to see if there's an appetite for this. I'm kind of curious, when you look at predicting this, would you say that there will be an appetite for this, or do you think it'll take some time to build out?
Yeah, I do think that there will be an appetite, a small portion of the existing XRP community, but then a lot of new people coming in.
Yeah.
And to your point, Flare's probably done the best example of how to lock this up. I forget what, it's a vault is what they call it.
Mm-hmm.
And what it does is it locks up the XRP on the XRP ledger side in a secure vault and then represents it over on Flare. That's what they've done with FXRP. Sounds like this Hex Trust is a little bit different, but they're keeping it in institutional grade custody.
Right.
And this is a non-starter for the XRP community if they don't feel like it's going to be secure. We are scared to death to do anything with our XRP.
That may have been why they did this.
Yeah.
Going this route, because they understood the psychographic of this community.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that this is going to be massive. I mean, Solana needs us and we need DeFi. And so the best thing, like I said, is that we're going to be able to participate in DeFi across all of these blockchains. And it's just competition is healthy, right? Where's the most secure platform that's giving us the best yield? We'll have all these options in front of us.
I wonder if Vibu was in the dark on this. He had to be, because I had him. I don't know if you saw that interview we had with him. It started as a regular interview, and then he started attacking Ripple and XRP in the middle of it. And I was like, okay, wait a minute. That wasn't necessarily what we were going to talk about, but let's go, kind of thing. And then this happens at breakpoint, and I'm like, wait a minute. Was that like, what was going on there?
Maybe we got to give them a little bit of credit for their marketing, I guess. Sometimes you got to send a few jabs.
Sometimes they do a good job around that. I would agree. Yeah, listen, it created a lot of buzz. That's for sure.
And I love it. Posting 589, posting the riddles, all that. Let them take XRP viral. I've been calling this for the last year, the XRP go viral moment.
Yeah.
And it comes with some love and it comes with some hate. And it's all attention brought back to XRP. And folks are finally starting to realize that they're going to be able to do something with their XRP besides just hold on it and speculate that banks are going to use it someday. Because that's their big criticism is
the integration also
coin,
mentioned
and that's
used for RLUSD. That'll be huge, because if we get a trading pair, that would be cool for obviously with a US dollar stablecoin RLUSD. This would be huge on fast chains like, everything from arbitrage. You could get payments globally. This without touching a bank, this would be pretty cool. And it also would, I think, only foster what RLUSD is going to be able to do in the future as well. So good news for everything. Ironic bedfellows we have now here.
And to add to that, Paul, you really want to use stable coins in these DeFi scenarios, because then you don't have to worry about your underlying collateral moving too much in price.
Right.
The tough part about putting XRP up is, if you put it into AMM pools, you could have impermanent loss. I've experienced that myself, where I made 70% cash on cash return being in an XRP casino coin liquidity pool, but I could have made 400% just holding XRP. So when you can deploy RLUSD, the stable coin, this is what I'm looking to do into 2026, is start to build out my passive income portfolio. And that's primarily going to start with RLUSD being deployed, whether it's on centralized exchanges, just hitting one click, earn 4 to 5%, or getting more aggressive and going to these other protocols where I can earn, 5 to 10%.
Right. Listen, I had Hugo on last week, and we were going into that because the potential here for earning and also lending is another factor I think we're going to see pretty aggressively grow. One thing that this does within this new, I guess we'll call it a partnership, is that when there is some ability to arbitrage here. I mean, whether it's price stability versus arbitrage, I'm kind of curious on your opinion. If you were trading let's just say, $2 on Binance, and then you get demand for Wrapped XRP on Solana, which pushes the price to like $1.02 or $2, let's say 210 or 204. Markets would buy the cheap XRP, wrap it in Hex Trust, and then sell it for wrap, wouldn't they? I mean, that's basically an arbitrage, right?
Yeah, they'll take it to the DEX on Solana, and this is just going to drive more demand.
So would this put some buying pressure on native XRP as on the ledger itself? Because this would help support the price, wouldn't it?
Yeah, because you'll be able to arbitrage not just between the DEX on Solana, the DEX, and multiple DEXs that you have on Ethereum, on Arbitrum, Avalanche, these other blockchains as well.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people will say, well, wait a minute, isn't Flare doing this? Just remember, this new hex trust is going to allow, think of it like XRP traveling to, other towns, ETH and Solana. Flare is basically building a brand new town that's specifically for XRP. So the mechanism is a little bit more unique. And also remember, Flare's a layer one themselves. So that in itself is unique in itself. It being, which is to me interesting, is the non-custodial approach with F assets. Be aware, you've got some options here. Which one would you choose, Zach? Or would you dabble in both?
Well, I've already started on Flare. I'm going to be reporting back to my community in a few weeks on that. The other day, I was sitting at my computer here deploying Flare and FXRP to all of the lending pools and all of the staking pools, literally all of them.
It's pretty cool, isn't it?
What's that?
It's pretty cool how it works.
Yes.
They've done a good job.
The big hurdle, though, like I said, for the XRP family, and I asked Robert from Zalman when one click. I saw him at Swell, and I said, one click to earn yield on XRP?
Hugo
and he said it's
that
coming
was
soon.
Coming. Yeah.
And when that happens, the floodgates open. Because not everybody's going to sit here like I am with, my Bifrost wallet going to 6 different liquidity pools and sending, Flare and FXRP all over the place.
Yeah.
But when you have the XRP family that has billions of XRP on Zalman and other wallets, right? Other centralized exchanges too. Yep. Uphold's going to roll this out. One click, you open the floodgates and it's game on.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And the opportunity, I think, for really flexing in DeFi open. Again, this has been the big DeFi dam that we've had within the XRP community for a long time. Man, a lot happening in the space, that's for sure. XRP was selected as one of the 4 tokens to be buying right now because of consolidation. Now, explain to me, we'll kind of talk about why we haven't seen price move with all the activity with ETFs. Explain to me why that has happened and how are these whale moves going on when even the market is saying XRP is one of the top 4 to be getting right now?
Well, this has been frustrating for a lot of folks because there was a lot of content out hyping up the ETFs, rightfully so. It is going to lead to price action. Last time I was on your show, I think I talked about how you were going to see a sell the news event after the ETFs launched.
Right on.
We had 20% pullback for Bitcoin and a 40% pullback for Ethereum. And so I said, expect the pullback, take advantage of the pullback. And this is what's taking place right now. XRP pulled back 30% to $1.81 in November. And for folks who are wondering, with all this money that came into the ETFs, why is the price not going up? And we have a very simple answer for them, Paul. What happened was in the month of November, there was $808 million of outflows on centralized exchanges. That's people selling XRP to dollars or other stablecoins, leaving XRP to the tune of $808 million. And would you believe it that on the other side, the ETF equation, there was $803 million of inflows into the ETFs.
And
please note that this was only the back half of November because the first ETF went live November 13th. So just in that 2-3 week period, you had just as much money come in through the ETFs as was leaving on centralized exchanges. But where does the market price get generated from? From the secondary market public exchanges. And so all of the XRP into the ETFs is coming in OTC, over the counter. So it doesn't impact that public market price yet. Okay.
Until it dries up.
Until it dries up.
Yep.
And until those inflows start to come in on the centralized exchanges, as we've seen in the past, when they do come in, they get aggressive with XRP. Yep. And you've seen me break down the market cap multiplier. Folks are wondering, why is XRP down with all this great news? Here's a great example. In November of 2024, the market cap multiplier for XRP was 800 to the upside. Based off the inflows that came in, our market cap grew by a factor of X. We added 100 billion of market cap in that 1 month period. Now we flip to November of 2025, we had 808 million of outflows. Our market cap dropped by 41 billion.
Right.
And so the market cap multiplier was 50 to the downside. What this shows us is that when the community gets bullish on XRP again, those inflows come in so aggressively that they just bid up that order book. And that's how we were able to expand our market cap by 100 billion in a 1 month period.
That's huge too, because I think a lot of people miss that whole point of really what the upside opportunity is here with just traditional finance starting to understand this is now available. This is something that, we're continuing to see more and more interest on, is regular investors starting to come into the space, buying their first token, literally for the first time. Most of the time they're doing it through an ETF. And now that XRP is available via these ETFs, and a lot of these high quality ETFs, I mean, we had Canary Capital, Bitwise, obviously Franklin Templeton, all of them out there pushing this product now, which means all their advisors are out there talking about XRP to the people that matter in institutional capital. So it's a big deal for sure. Let's see.
If I could
Mikkel
just
and I
add
were
real
on
quick,
yesterday.
Paul, we already have over 500 million XRP parked behind these ETFs.
Yep.
When you start to add XRP into these digital asset treasury companies that's getting basically parked and locked up for a pretty good duration, you add in all of this DeFi. When I wrap my XRP and send it over to Flare, that's not being used for liquidity and settlements by Ripple or anybody else on the XRP ledger. When I wrap it up and send it to Solana. And so between ETFs, digital asset treasuries, and then DeFi, we're going to see billions of XRP locked up in the next 12 months. And what folks need to focus on is not the circulating supply that's 60 billion. You need to ask yourself, what's the real available supply? What's the float? If we want to pull a term from the traditional market, what's the real float of XRP? It's not 60 billion. It's probably not even 20 and maybe not even 10 billion. There's way less XRP out there available than folks are being led to believe.
Well, and less coming. Mikkel and I were on yesterday, and his point, we were kind of looking at the potential trajectory on this. And if you run this through all the AI models, we have a couple of tools that we use constantly about really looking at the potential of certain projects. And with XRP, just on the trajectory numbers right now, it's still looking at anywhere between 10 and 15 billion for just the ETFs in the next 12 months. That may be underscored. In fact, the AI model we were using, we're saying this could be underscored because of exactly the point you just hit on, is availability on the float. And you look at that along with what's happening right now on Vivo. This is a good example. This was a headline today. Let me share this for you guys. This hit the news and again locks up another set of 300 million worth of privately held shares in Ripple Labs. So you know what that means. We're going to continue to see more pressure coming from the market. And this, of course, if you guys don't know, VivoPower, one of the biggest digital asset treasuries out there for XRP, but getting in with Lean Ventures, which is a Korean venture company. And when you look at South Korea, one of the most active communities out there in XRP for sure. So this is good news. What were your thoughts about DATs in general? Do you think we are too many still or not enough?
There's going to be a lot more coming. This is just getting started. And as VivoPower mentioned, I know this kind of went viral when they mentioned that they were buying XRP at a big discount. It's because they're buying shares of Ripple, which owns a bunch of XRP.
Right.
And the 40 billion valuation that they just raised $500 million at, as they announced that Ripple swell, is far below the net asset value of the XRP on their balance sheet. And so VivoPower gets it. More and more people are going to follow in their path. And, for me, it's incredible to see the appetite for Ripple equity up at a valuation that's basically 10x from where we saw it trading at in the private markets just 12 to 24 months ago, when it was crazy. Trading at, $20 to $30 per share. Now it's up, towards $200 per share. And the demand just continues to grow. And when you have Ripple making acquisitions, like they have completed the acquisition of Rail, that was announced yesterday, G Treasury, Hidden Road, this is why the valuation is still grossly undervalued and why there's still so much demand for this company. And so I think that we're going to see a lot more digital asset treasury companies putting XRP on their balance sheet. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think
Ripple
it will be the
too.
kind of DATs that are similar to what BMNR has done, which is it's a working asset treasury, especially with DeFi now available, whether you're using Flare or you're using this new tool sets that we're going to see out there. The fact is they're going to find new ways to make this, this XRP go to work. That in itself will be another opportunity that won't be just a company that's holding against an MNAV, in the asset itself, but actually putting some of this XRP out to work for sure. What do you think could pull it off?
I think that Evernorth is going to spearhead the effort, and they're going to set the example with Ashish Birla, big executive from Ripple, taking over that company. They're going to set the model, and a lot of people are going to follow. Not only are they going to participate in DeFi, they're going to be running infrastructure themselves, And so I think this is going to be a great model of showing people how they can become a digital asset treasury company that
Yeah.
does include XRP in that strategy, whether or not they're a dedicated XRP DAT or they have a wholesome approach with multiple chains. This will show folks how to do it with XRP.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think you're right. As we see, and there'll be probably a handful of others. I think companies that maybe we're not anticipating just yet could be jumping in this space. I'm hearing rumblings right now from Wall Street and from a lot of the insiders that we talk to around the potential wave now because of the validity that we've seen in the ETF for the market. Now the DATs themselves are starting to understand just how much of a demand this is. Big opportunity. Speaking of demand, we got to talk about this because Ripple, of course, now is breaking into the European banking sector with Amina. So this is one of many most likely to come, but this is Amina Bank. How important is this right now, Zach? Do you think it's a big deal, or is this kind of a nothing burger?
Just like with the DATs, it's the first of many to come.
Yeah.
Ripple's been expanding overseas in the midst of the SEC lawsuit.
Mm.
And now you're starting to see all of those partnerships really come to fruition. And they're going to be going live with XRP settlement and usage. And then uh, also with the stable coins that are being issued over there, Schumann Financial
Yep.
has really led the charge in tokenizing the euro over there. So this is just getting started.
Yeah. Well, and to the point, this being a Swiss crypto bank, that's an advantage because that's only going to open it up to the the European cabal, I'll call it, in terms of banks, because these guys all work with each other. And once one gets going into it, what happens next is it's just like a domino effect going forward. I still think, though, that we are in for a very unusual situation that could come out of Europe. Um, and I'm concerned about how the EU is handling a lot of things, within the markets, but more importantly on the global macro side of things. So I just curious if maybe some of these nation states or large banks are trying to position to kind of hedge their bet against the ECB, going forward. So I don't know. I don't know. Just some interesting points wrapping
Everybody
up.
big and small is trying to hedge against these central banks, which are causing so much destruction across this planet. So
Yeah,
yes, I
it's
would agree.
crazy. Well, and you've got, the central banks, of course, rallying up on gold and silver. Highest gold or centralization we're starting to see from the EU, China, etc. When you look at precious metals, I know we talk about it a little bit on this show. This is something that, I get into. I know you're into silver. How much of a portfolio spot should precious metals hold in a portfolio right now?
Well, I'm not a financial advisor, but I have kept about 2 to 3% relative to my crypto holdings and the cash that I have on my small balance sheet. And for me, it's a defensive measure, right?
Yeah.
I keep it on a completely separate side of my portfolio. And that to me gives me safety and security, knowing that I'm hedged. But it's been incredible to watch silver outperform the S&P 500 by a
That's
factor of
crazy.
6 this year,
Yeah.
you know?
That's the
And
thing
I
that
would I would
blows me
remind
away.
everybody that if you look at the Silver Institute, there's been a deficit for silver for the past 5 years. So anybody who's thinking that this train stops anytime soon, I think is going to be in for a surprise.
Yeah, it's a supply shock that has been out there in the market for some time. We started reporting on this about 3 months ago on where silver was coming from. This is the silver chart, guys, right here. And if you just look, this is on the 4 hour, but I'll go back in and look at a little bit of movement since November. This is like Thanksgiving. Even with this big pullback this morning on the 4 hour, 22% up, since November 21st. So nice little move on silver itself. Gold, of course, clipped above 4,300 and then also took a big sharp dive back down to 4,250. So interesting
Looks like
moves in the
somebody's
market
trying
right
to
now.
defend. Somebody's
Yeah,
trying.
this is a defense. Yeah. This is the 4 hour to kind of see the action, but same kind of scenario. You see this though in gold more often. If you go back here to this high that we hit back in November, and what was that? That was around 42.38. It spiked back down to 4,000. And then, of course, has worked its way back into where it's defending right now at around $4,200. And then I think it was one of the primary Wall Street analysts off Bloomberg that called for a $6,000 gold by end of next year. That would be big.
Yeah,
What would have to
we're
break?
moving quickly,
What would
quickly
have to
towards
break
those
for that to
targets.
happen?
Well, the everybody's calling BS on these central banks,
Yeah.
right? They're especially the Federal Reserve. They're lowering rates, and the bond market is giving the Fed a big middle finger by sending yields higher.
Yep.
Gold and silver are responding by, gold was just shy of a new all-time high here before it got smacked this morning. Silver's smashing to a new all-time high as we speak. And, it is all one big trade against these central banks who are backed into a corner. They're not going to, admit their fault. They're going to just resort back to what they know best, which is QE. And before they get to QE, they do not QE, which is exactly what the Federal Reserve announced this week.
Yep.
40 billion of short-term treasuries are going to be purchased by them over the next 30 days starting today. And this is on
Wouldn't you
top.
qualify that as QE, Zach?
Well, this is what I've been saying, Paul. Let the talking head pundits on CNBC and The Economist debate whether it's QE or reserve management. What do we need to stack? These are the assets that we need to stack.
Yep.
And
I
is
just
stimulus.
some more because it's hitting my number right now to acquire more XRP, which is at $1.99.
Yep. Yeah, it looks like the markets are getting hit here this morning. And there's big concerns, right? We have the interest rate decision from Japan coming up on the 19th.
Yep.
And, rumors of war with Venezuela. And so I've been telling folks we're very close to the bottom. If you look, the last time the Fed announced not QE in September of 2019, the repo market was in trouble. There was a liquidity crisis on the back end. And this was before the big one hit in March of 2020.
Right.
So you started to see issues coming to the surface. The Fed responded. And then during that time period, you had a consolidation for XRP under 25 cents. And then eventually in March, XRP did the quick, death candle down to about 10 to 12 cents. This presented one of the best buying opportunities for XRP in the past 5-6 years. And just so folks understand, within 6 months, you saw actually a 15x on XRP. You saw 153% move on silver. So if you're wondering when's the time to buy these assets, it's when the Fed announces not QE, and then maybe keep an extra little bit of liquidity around in case a big one hits, because usually that's the precursor. The Fed is basically telling you they've made a mistake. What's going to cause it to break? Don't worry about that. Is it QE? Is it reserve management? Don't worry about that. Focus on what you need to be stacking. And I wanted to make this point too, Paul. Silver is one of the best examples of a fundamental investment that will break you down and wear you out before it finally makes its move. See, many people in the XRP community are frustrated, right? Whether they're new folks that have been in for 6 to 12 months or folks like myself that have been in for, 6-7 years. Give a shout out to the silver community that held on
strong
for decades. And they're finally being rewarded. And just like many people say, I'd rather be a little bit early than one day late when it comes to these moves, right? Because, I think that the setup's clear. We're going to get stimulus. Don't worry about what they call it. Just worry about what you're stacking.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, I mean, for those that are in XRP right now, and if you were in during the last setup for the bull run, which was March of 2020, XRP up 1,700% since then. And that's trading at $2 today. So that's
and
the kind
swing
of significance
to $3.66 all-time high was a 30x swing, 3,000%.
Huge. Opportunities here start to roll. The question is do we ever see a $1 XRP again?
I say not a chance.
Okay.
But, the aliens might show up. I joke about that with my community.
Well, that's a different kind of prediction there, Zach.
It takes something like that. I mean, literally, it's going to take a big one going off. It's going to take the alien show. It's going to take a big one, Paul.
Yeah.
Just look at what's happened here recently. There's so much passive buyers with orders lined up. I'll tell your community right now, Paul, I got my buy order to add to my XRP long sitting at $1.91.
Yeah.
I have lowered the average on my XRP long that I entered in July. For anybody who bought the top and is beating themselves up over it, I'd like everybody to know that I did the same thing with you. I entered an XRP long above 340 in July. But what have I done since? I've dollar cost average down $2.23.
Boom.
That's where I currently sit. So my long's in the red. Am I going anywhere? No, I'm only going to be adding to it. I have a buy order sitting at $1.91. If we break the $1.90 order block, we could test the $1.80 level again, like we did on November 21st.
Yep.
And below that, the big yearly low I considered to be in April at $1.60. The 10/10 liquidation event, I refer to the Coinbase chart where it went down to $1.77.
Right.
The Binance chart, that I don't really look at too much. But if you look at Coinbase, we've been setting higher lows all year. $1.60 in April, 77 on 10/10, and then $1.81 in November. And so I'm just going to front run these levels, and the rest of the community is going to do the same thing. So for folks that are waiting around for $1 XRP, I mean, you're betting on one of the biggest black swans in our lifetimes hitting to get down to that level.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and these are the kind of things that would take to get Bitcoin down in the 60 to 50K range. And I think maybe that's what we're seeing right now with not necessarily a 50 to 60K Bitcoin. What I'm looking at on the markets as we're recording, I'll bring up Coin Market Cap, holding at 3.1 trillion on market cap. Fear and greed still holding at 25, which is interesting to me because this has been kind of up and down. But Bitcoin right there just slid in under 90,000 again as we're recording. ETH down back around 3K. Many people say we could see a $2,500 ETH, and then of course XRP holding and defending still at that $2 zone, which it has been defending hard against the last several pullbacks that we've seen. This will take something big to break this. But what is your outlook right now for the markets? Are you bullish, bearish? Where would you position yourself?
Well, I believe that we are going to get smacked up one more time here in the next week or so. And that's why I have my order sitting at $1.91 to front run the order block that's at $1.90. And so I'm positioned for the downside move. And I also have the understanding that this corrective move is nearly finished.
Bingo.
And we're looking for Bitcoin to recover back above 100,000 shortly thereafter, and XRP to start to move back up to about the 270 range.
Yeah. And
I'm still looking for a Q1 2026 XRP price target coming in just shy of $10. I'm looking at that, $5 to $8 range. We got to clear out that sell wall, and then we can move on to double digits for XRP later into 2026. But I think a lot of folks are going to get caught off guard as we've seen basically a month of extreme fear in the month of November, starting to get a little bit momentum coming back here. But I would urge everybody who is looking to buy at lower prices, get your orders in now because they're going to come very fast. They're not going to last long, and we will be moving back up to the upside aggressively. And just look at this from a market maker perspective. They have way more money to make wiping out the shorts and taking this thing higher at this point. And that's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, it happens so many times. I mean, this is trading a 101 in terms of how these markets move like this. The big thing, though, and I think a lot of you guys listening and watching now, you're holders. You've been here for a long time. You've been through the wars. You've seen everything that's happened in crypto after quite a bit. And I agree with you, Zach. I cannot imagine the amount of bullish news that we continue to see that is only setting this up for an unbelievable run here. And I'm just curious, when true QE begins, when we start seeing over 100 billion starting to go into the Fed on monthly basis, that I think is what people are not ready for, because that is where people will be going into risk assets like crazy. And XRP is going to be one of the top ones, without a doubt.
And that's the point I tried to get across in my video a couple days ago. When I titled the video, Fed confirms XRP stimulus, people attack me and they say that's clickbait. They can't add 2 plus 2.
Think ahead, baby. Think ahead.
And I showed them the charts. XRP, during the last time they did not QE, you have 10 to 15x upside in 6 months. So I know 6 months is a long time in crypto, but
But in regular investing, that is a walk in the park.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And by the way, the market makers have achieved their job, the powers that be, whoever you want to say, in making retail think that XRP is never going to recover again, right? And the broader market as well too. Just broadly speaking on crypto, they have completed their mission in squeezing everybody out. And are they done? Maybe not yet, right? Maybe they squeeze us a little bit more, but this is wrapping up. The accumulation phase is wrapping up, and as soon as they're done with it, they're going to let it fly. And the liquidity that's going to come in, we saw what it did in 2019 leading up to the greatest run that we've had in 2020 and 2021.
Yep.
And I just hope that folks are prepared. I mean, the last month example is perfect. Literally the same amount of money that's coming in through the ETFs is leaving out the door through centralized exchanges.
Exactly. Yeah.
And retail is the ones that need this investment the most. If you want to change your life, you're going to stack these assets before the next big wave of stimulus comes.
Yep. Well, and to your point, I'm looking at the June 20 run that we saw to the high at 190. I think it was 195. That was 1,000% that we ran between less than 12 months, during that cycle. Pretty significant as we start to see these cycles go through. Do you think the 4-year cycle is done? What's your position? Yeah,
absolutely. Just look, history is going to play out again. The under 10x is coming for XRP to that $15 to $20 range in the next 12 months. Yeah, bingo. That's my base target for 2026 later in the year.
I like it. Zach Rector, make sure and catch him over on Zach Rector 94 on YouTube. You guys can do that. And of course, Zach, always fun to chat it up with you. Thanks so much for coming in today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Paul. It's always a pleasure.
You bet. You guys know what to do. Like and subscribe. Share this to someone out there that's probably learning about crypto for the first time. That's right. And in reality, what a great time to get in the space for the first time. You're in the right place at the right time. I love it. We'll catch you next time right here on the XRP Pod. Take care.